Hey friends, it's Joaby here with another video editorial. Today I wanted to explore the reasons why some people aren't clicking with the Batmobile in the new Rocksteady game Batman Arkham Knight. To begin, I'm playing on PS4, recording via Elgato HD60, and the code was provided to me by Warner Brothers for review. I shouldn't need to point this out, but I'm not saying your favourite game sucks. I'm just trying to dig into what makes the Batmobile kind of crappy. So, the Batmobile. Look, the Batmobile has issues. It controls weird because it has perpetual forward momentum and no clearly defined braking point. That is to say, it's too easy to transition from forward to backwards by hitting the square button, which, by the way, is an insane button to have as your default brake or reverse combo button. You can change controls in the game options, not the controls menu, and the pursuit form of your vehicle controls a little better afterwards, but it becomes awkward in tight areas, an important factor in some boss fights. I get that there needs to be a button so the player can switch between driving and hover tank modes, but I only get it in the sense that I understand the need for it within the context of how the game currently exists. What I'm saying is, the need for the vehicle to switch modes is a completely made up problem, one created by and for Batman Arkham Knight. So if it's completely manufactured, then it should have been created in a manner that isn't craptastic. So yeah, you might not like the Batmobile because functionally it's not as good as it could be. But what if it's more than just that? What if the Batmobile not only failed to add anything to the game, what if it detracted from the experience as well? What if the Batmobile's existence in Batman Arkham Knight makes the game worse? It adds very little. Batman is a capable superhero with just the cape on his back and the cowl on his noggin, and the half race car tank machine doesn't bring anything to the table to change that. I did some tests, and travel between the islands of Gotham as Batman on foot, so to speak, is just as quick as in a vehicle, just a little bit slower, actually. That's because Batman gets to take the path as the bat flies, ignoring bridges and flying in a straight path. What it adds the most is in the game's puzzle elements, where Batman is forced to use his new toy to solve simplistic puzzles or remote control destroy some obstacles. But this is, again, a scenario where the Batmobile is used to solve problems which wouldn't exist if the Batmobile didn't exist. It's almost poetic if you think about it. One of the common criticisms or meta-commentaries regarding the Caped Crusader is the idea that the costume villains of Gotham wouldn't exist if Batman himself didn't. The idea is that Bruce Wayne donning the cowl escalated the crime scenario, and so to keep the natural order of things, to preserve the city's criminal ecosystem, the villains needed to raise the stakes as well. Essentially, the supervillains Batman fights wouldn't exist if Batman himself didn't. That's all a bit existential for a video about a car with bat decals. So it's not better for transporting bat people, and the things it's good for wouldn't exist without it. So we've established that it doesn't add anything to the game. But what does it subtract exactly? Batman Arkham City was my favourite game of 2011. It was my game of the year. The court of public opinion holds other games in higher stead, but for me, Rocksteady's open-world superhero game was a brilliant game with no real peer that year. From beginning until end, it did what every good one-shot comic should. It explored and studied a character to allow us to understand him better. In the way that many license-based video games often do, Arkham City borrowed heavily from surrounding lore to create a story that is extremely familiar for fans who've absorbed all of it. But Paul Dini didn't stop there, and that's what makes Arkham City so great. Dini used the well-worn storylines of Batman Tales Past as a backing track to do something completely different. It was as if he sampled successful beats from Batman's history to create an all-new and utterly brilliant composition. Dini doesn't get all the credit, however. From the moment the game begins, Arkham City locks the player into being the Batman. The game has you begin in the shoes of billionaire Bruce Wayne, locked in Arkham City under false pretenses and forced to deal with captivity in a hostile area. It would be an intimidating beginning if the tone of the game were different. In any other game, a tuxedoed man being thrust into a massive prison might be of the horror genre. But Bruce Wayne has a secret, one shared between him and the player. He's Batman. And because you walk a few hundred meters in Bruce's shoes, his inevitable transition into cape and cowl stick with you that much more. What I loved about Batman Arkham City was that it wanted to make you Batman. That way, everything that happened in the story mattered that much more to you. So, what does this have to do with the Batmobile? The Batmobile separates you from Batman. Arkham Knight does a lot of things that separate you from Batman in ways I'm not a huge fan of, but they're palatable in small doses. Putting you in the shoes of Catwoman or Nightwing, the way they did in Arkham City, is one of those odd things that makes you appreciate being Batman more. Taking away control to show Batman walking places or grabbing people, with no input from the player, is less successful, even if it is important for the narrative. But you spend so much time in the Batmobile, and the controls of the machine are so different, that it feels like its own character. You're not Batman in the Batmobile, you're simply the Batmobile. It's not just me who thinks this. The Riddler specifically concocts puzzles for Batman in Arkham Knight, and in his main questline, those riddles are split down the middle. Half involve Batmobile puzzles, half involve Batman puzzles. There's a clear delineation between these puzzles and, shock horror, the Batman puzzles are actual puzzles, while the Batmobile puzzles are just races half the time. That's another thing about the Batmobile. I didn't enjoy using it, and so suddenly I began examining incongruous elements of the game world more. Like, we've all collectively accepted that everyone in Batman's world is more resilient than normal, right? Batman knocks people unconscious and just straight up ignores ever putting them in the recovery position, despite the fact that they're invariably properly KO'd, like floppy, on the ground, unconscious for minutes at a time, KO'd. But Batman never beats himself up about the deaths he caused due to negligence, because we have to assume they never happen. We've all collectively internalized that people can cop much more of a beating in Batman's world. But the Batmobile, I drive that around and I have to wonder. That thing has to weigh at least 20 tons, right? And it's powered by a jet engine. I did some maths. Probably bad maths, but maths anyway, and a conservative estimate has the Batmobile traveling at least 95 kilometers an hour. That's 60 miles per hour for you Americans. I'm not saying the Batmobile would vaporize people, but regardless of their resilience, they wouldn't be getting it back up after being sideswiped by it. Batman's I never kill thing is harder to swallow when he instigates a head-on collision with a small sedan and then drives away like it's nothing. Not to mention the drones. The way Arkham Knight forces you into drone battles is awful. But it's made worse when you realize Batman would be basically boned if said unmanned drones simply included a seating area for a soldier. The soldier doesn't even have to do anything. Batman's stupid tank car dies from just a handful of blasts from the drones. So if Batman's own moral code prevented him from blowing said drones up due to the existence of a single human hostage within, he'd be basically screwed. Narratively speaking, the drones are idiotic. In gameplay terms, they create simply a tedious shooting minigame in a game series that is otherwise praised for its fantastic combat. They exist solely to give the Batmobile a purpose, but they suck and they make the game a little worse. The Batmobile detracts from the game experience. It has bad controls and it introduces gameplay elements that aren't great solely to justify its own existence. It's the Batmobile. There you have it. I think the Batmobile is bad, and those are my reasons why. Before I wrap up, I want to reflect on something about games criticism. All of the above represents my experience with the game, not anyone else's. I use definitive language and an aggressive tone, but I'm not saying only my viewpoint is correct, or that anyone who likes something I dislike is wrong or dumb or whatever. All I want to do is show off a cool new game while giving you something to think about. With that in mind, Batman Arkham Knight is a great game, one I really enjoyed. I finished it yesterday and I loved almost all of it. The way they characterize Gotham is wonderful, drawing deep inspiration on Burton's neon gothic architecture to create a beautifully colourful yet dark world for Batman to explore. Despite my criticisms of the Batmobile, I wholeheartedly believe Batman Arkham Knight is worth buying. Though, of course, not if you're only playing games on PC. Thanks for watching. Hit me up with your thoughts in the comments below or on Twitter at JobyJojo. If you enjoyed the video, hit like, and if you want more stuff like this, hit subscribe. A new thing popped up on my dashboard, my YouTube dashboard the other week, so if you want to buy me a beer, consider supporting me via YouTube fan funding. I love beer, but don't feel like you have to. In fact, if you've made it this far into the video, I'm just grateful that you stuck around for the whole thing. Anyway, I'll catch you next time. Bye!